Welcome back, everybody, to another conversation for the end of the world. As always, I am your host, Brock Teal, and today we have Her Majesty herself, Princess Etch-a-Sketch. How you doing, Jane?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, glad to have you here. So, as painfully obvious by your attire, it would be safe to assume that you're into Etch-a-Sketches.
Yes. I'm a pretty big fan of the greatest toy on the planet, Etch-a-Sketch. I do wear them as necklaces. I have some earrings, and I pretty much rock Etch-a-Sketch anytime I can.
So, what got you into Etch-a-Sketch? Other than being the greatest toy, there had to have been something else that initially drawn you to it, right?
Yeah, so for me, it was basically a product of childhood boredom. It was a toy. I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, so it's a toy that we already had in the house, and I would go visit my grandma on weekends. She wouldn't really let me watch TV much, so to pass the time, I ended up spending an inordinate amount of time playing with an Etch-a-Sketch, and inadvertently got good at it without realizing that it was something that other people didn't know how to do. And it wasn't until I was around, I was around like 12 years old when I realized that other kids were not obsessed with their Etch-a-Sketch like I was. So, yeah, it's been a pretty wild journey. It definitely, basically because I was a bored kid.
It's probably comparable to one of those kids that knits with their grandma and then comes to school with the sweater they made, except for you may have done a portrait of somebody to be like, how the hell did you do that?
Exactly. And I never even thought of bringing an Etch-a-Sketch to school until I was in 8th grade. I just brought one in my backpack out of nowhere. And that's when I discovered that other kids did not know how to do anything at all in an Etch-a-Sketch.
Oh, I bet everybody was like, look at my perfect square.
Yeah.
I've tried for so long. It's like someone's like, bullshit, I can do a circle. And then you're like, I can do Starry Night by Van Gogh. Which was honestly the first thing I saw of you when I think it was YouTube's Rising Star segment is where I saw you and your Etch-a-Sketch of Van Gogh's Starry Night, which I was just like, yeah, no, that's because normally I get all my people from TikTok. You're actually the first YouTube personality.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. 2020 was, it'll sound weird to say, but 2020 was a good year for me in regards to social media. YouTube gave me this extremely awesome platform out of nowhere. I've had an account since 2007. And
Jesus.
I was uploading there as an afterthought. Like, I had given up on my dreams of YouTube stardom many a moon ago. I never even thought about really trying to grow my audience there. So I was making more content thanks to TikTok, because I joined TikTok in like late March of 2020. And that finally prompted me to start doing more time-lapse videos, which is something I always wanted to do with Etch-a-Sketch drawings. And I started uploading the videos that I made to TikTok onto YouTube as an afterthought. And YouTube decided around that time that they wanted to make a competing feature to TikTok called Shorts. So they were picking content that fit that criteria without notifying any of the creators. You just like got picked up by the algorithm randomly. So over my videos were going from maybe a few hundred views at most to thousands and thousands and thousands of views. And my subscriber count went up from around 500, which I never really thought it was going to get much more than that. It went from 500 to like over 15,000. And then they featured me on their page for a day. And then it went up like another 20,000 or so over the course of the next month or two. So it's been incredible. Now my YouTube account is like pretty chill. In fact, my subscriber count's been lowering, but I don't mind that because, like I said, I never thought I'd get more than 500. So everything I've been cherry on top. I know YouTube is like such a weird hustle. So
it is, which was weird because when I initially saw you, and I don't know how that lines up, but I remember it fairly clearly. I saw you, and then I think you were at like 600-700 subscribers. I was like, yes, finally, a small YouTuber, someone that will give me the time of day to interview. And then I come back, and I think you're at like 6, 7, 8,000. I'm like, when the hell did this happen?
It really was overnight. Yep, it absolutely was overnight. And I'd been sitting comfortably at like 500 for years. Like, there are occasionally early adapters who will comment on my stuff and say like, oh, I've been around since, 5 years now. And I feel bad for those people because my account was like, I wasn't even uploading much content for the first 12 years of my YouTube channel. It was always a place where I just favorited content and just used it casually more as a consumer than a creator. So yeah, you caught me at an interesting time. I didn't know that's how you found me, was through YouTube. So yeah, 2020, really bizarre year for me because I had been kind of plateauing in all of my like social media numbers. Like, I think I was at like around 3,000 on Instagram, which was like my best place. But then once I joined TikTok, I found an explosive audience there. It's like the first time I'd ever really experienced legitimate success with like consistent virality. I've had work go viral online before, but the thing about virality is it just lasts overnight, basically. Like, it's a quickly burning candle, and it usually doesn't really have very strong returns. You'll have a few people who stick around, but after that, it just kind of fizzles. So TikTok established this whole new audience for me, and now I'm at like something like 130,000 on TikTok, which I don't know anything about how those numbers really compare to other apps. Like, for all I know, half of these followers are like fake accounts. I have no idea. It's such a new frontier for TikTok. But YouTube's now, over like 30,000. And then my Instagram has grown a bit, but honestly, by this point, I've kind of given up on Instagram. Like, it's just, I'll post there, and I like using it as a dedicated platform, but everybody I know who's a content creator has had pretty rough experiences with Instagram as far as trying to like gain followers and gain traction on the content. So I still use it, but I've kind of become more of a TikTok YouTube convert thanks to the audiences following me there.
Yeah, I think the only thing I've really realized with TikTok, or not TikTok, but Instagram, is it's just really good at cross-platforming posts. So I'll put something up on TikTok or Instagram, and then it'll cross-platform over to Facebook and Twitter, so I don't have to worry about them. And I'll just have to rearrange the tags.
Yeah. I don't use any automated tools to cross-post all of my stuff, but I will just basically use the same content and then copy paste. Like with Twitter, you're limited by character space, so I usually truncate the description, all that good stuff. Twitter's an interesting place. It's by far my smallest following, but I've had some really solid interactions there. I find Twitter is fantastic for connecting with people that you're interested in connecting with. I think people are pretty open to conversation there if you seek them out and reach out to them directly. So yeah,
it's weird because TikTok's really is really the only app that's like really like discoverability is where it shines. Like you'd have to look up specific hashtags for Instagram and maybe even Facebook. Maybe somebody will share something like from a friend, and then that's how you'll find it. But usually that creator is already really big. But Instagram, besides the hashtags, the discoverability is almost non-existent, and basically the same thing for Twitter. But TikTok, I remember throwing up like just stupid videos. I'm like, why are you going to have this TikTok and try to grow an audience at all if you're not going to have at least one video? And I know the first video, they're supposed to give you like inflated numbers to kind of get you hooked on it. But even with my second and third, they at least got half of what the first one did. And I mean, 1,000 views that's better than anything I'm expecting. Yeah.
TikTok is really surprising as far as the numbers you get on that app. It's just incredible to me. Like, for me, when I first joined, I definitely agree that when I first joined, my first 2 videos were like very well performing, like compared to Instagram. And then my third video, that one went viral on the app. And so my follower account overnight doubled what it was on Instagram. And it just felt like I've been on Instagram for 5 years and I had to claw.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it definitely feels like it's just easier on TikTok. With that said, though, I still see value in every social media app. I think TikTok's great, but it's a really young audience, and I find that the quality of conversation I have through TikTok isn't necessarily that strong. But because, like you said, the discoverability, I have discovered this whole new network of people that I'm starting to make friends through TikTok. I'm starting to really discover cool content creators, cool personalities, different artists who work in different mediums and do different things. And I love it. I love that about TikTok. You're totally right. I have never found that through Instagram. Never really, I always had to seek it out, like you said, through hashtags. And so I think it's an interesting trend, and I feel like I'm super fortunate to be riding this wave. A lot of people say when it comes to apps, you've got to get on them before they start nerfing them.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much that's true for TikTok per se. I still feel like it's the Wild West for the app. I still think newbies can join and have a great time and get more reach than they've ever had on the other apps. But the ship sailed back in, like, I don't know, 2014 for Instagram, and I've never experienced anything on Twitter. So yeah. No. And then Facebook is just dead.
Oh, Facebook is. I remember when everybody was like, Brock, you got to get on Facebook. MySpace is dead. And I was like, I'll never leave MySpace. Facebook is so stupid. Facebook? That's a dumb name. And then now I have a Facebook, and I got a Facebook like 3 months after. And now I'm like, yeah, no, Facebook's kind of dead.
Yeah, Facebook is it's not cool anymore. And Instagram's starting to become not cool anymore too, because it's so like ad heavy, and it's basically you gotta like pay to win or pay to like reach your own audience. So too exhausting. But
absolutely.
Yeah. Unfortunately, well, for me, I enjoy social media. It's ironic that this is like what we've been talking about for most of the call, but it is important for what I do as an Etch-a-Sketch artist. A lot of my outreach, a lot of my like advertising comes from posting on social media, and that social media can be any of the apps I mentioned, but also Reddit. Reddit has been really big for me over the years. And that's basically how I advertise what I do. And that's how people find me. Pretty much all of my clientele comes from people who find me online and reach out to me because they saw a post that I did of this or that, and then they'll commission me to create this or that, or they'll just buy something from my Etsy store. So it's of paramount importance for me personally, like for my business, to keep abreast of what's going on with social media and basically go where it's active. With all that said, I joined TikTok kicking and screaming. I really didn't want to do it. I was thinking, oh, one more app. Like, yeah. I just dreaded the idea. And thanks to pandemic, I was stuck at home. I used to live in Chicago. So I was stuck at home. I lost all of my work that had me traveling, and I ran out of excuses to not make video content. So I finally started recording a lot of stuff at home, and that's what grew my new audiences and actually helped me keep afloat during pandemic. Normally I teach a lot of workshops and how to do Etch-a-Sketch art, as well as going to live events and other like public talks and stuff, and those kind of help comprise my revenue. So when I lost all of that revenue, it was the work that I was doing on social media that brought the clientele that helped me like keep doing what I wanted to do during pandemic. Like I didn't have to worry about going on unemployment like some of my artist friends had to do, which is like totally understandable. I didn't have to sacrifice, despite losing the revenue streams, I was still able to keep Etch-a-Sketching. I just did other things, mostly commission based throughout pandemic.
Okay. Yeah. So before we get into the more Etch-a-Sketch oriented discussion, I do have to congratulate you, because before getting on this conversation and checking your TikTok just to like refresh myself, see if there's anything new that you did, before, besides the little Disney project that we'll talk about in a moment.
Oh,
I do have to congratulate you because I think the last video you posted has damn near hit 500,000.
yeah, that last video. And this is a perfect example of why TikTok has been such a fantastic place. I never have any idea what's going to like spark fire there. And the last video I uploaded, I think 2 days ago, I did this silly little video where I just went around my office, grabbed different Etch-a-Sketches, and basically judged the quality of the different kinds of knobs on each.
Yeah, like never expect that. I don't know, like someone's like, oh my God, square knobs, I gotta show my friend. Like that I can only assume that was what actually happened.
Yeah. So the video just did fantastic on the app, and I'm learning through TikTok that I need to put myself in front of the camera more because people are interested in hearing not only about my art, but about my profession and my collection of Etch-a-Sketches and want to learn more about why I do what I do. And I'm so used to only sharing the art. I'm so used to just posting the timelapse videos or final photos of the art. And I'm used to just typing up these descriptions that most people don't read because it's too long and they keep scrolling. So I'm learning to be more personable online and to share more about what I love with the world. So that video was like a totally silly idea I had. And I've learned that TikTok is the perfect place for silly ideas like that. It's the perfect place to just run on a whim and come up with a silly little entertaining idea. And if it's a hit, it's a hit. If it flops, it flops. It's fine. You can just make something else next time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it flops, literally no one will remember in a day.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and it's really cool. It's really cool. It's taught me to be more loose with what I do. I used to be so focused on photographing my work precisely and going into meticulous detail, making sure it was nice and clean and perfect before uploading anything. And I used to have a really complicated film setup for how I filmed my art. And it would take literally hours to set up the lighting and get the tripod just right and use the fancy schmancy camera. And I learned because of TikTok that people just want to see the thing being made, and it doesn't have to be perfect in how it's filmed. They just want entertaining content. And that's one of the things I love about that app specifically is just how candid and fun it is. So I try to be more candid now. I try not to take 20 minutes to set up the perfect shot. I try to just wing it, and if it's not perfect, whatever, it's fine. Nobody's expecting perfection on the app.
Yeah. Let me switch over to all right, there we go. This will be fine. I'll be able to edit this out. I had to switch Wi-Fi sources real quick. Oh, but yeah. So getting deeper into the whole Etch-a-Sketch thing, you told us how you got started. You were pretty much just left alone to fend for yourself as a child. But so and the work classes, I'd assume you'd show up to maybe a Comic-Con or two or any kind of like live conferences like that. Your Etsy shop is really unique because of course I told you that I shared your Stonks Etch-a-Sketch on the Wall Street Bets when the GameStop thing was happening, and that actually kind of blew up just a bit. I don't know if or for how much you sold it for, but a lot of your stuff, like a lot of people would be like, I'm not paying $150 for a small little Etch-a-Sketch, but I mean, they seem to just be selling regardless of the normal. I can just do that myself. I mean, because again, it is a very unique like art set, and honestly, I haven't really found anyone else. Like, you're the only Etch-a-Sketch person I know and have been able to find. Is that your experience, or is that why you moved? Did you like make the LA trip for Etch-a-Sketch artist over in Maryland? Not Maryland.
Yeah, so I'm currently in Maryland. Yeah. There's a few questions I'll answer there. The first one is I did sell the stonks. Stonks sold when the GameStop stock was at around like $60. So the person who bought it got it for a killer price. That one did sell. For those not in the know, I had the price of the Etch-a-Sketch for stonks based on the current price of the GameStop stock.
Oh,
so the price
no.
fluctuated daily. So when I posted it, it was a $350 rendition. And then, you know, it started that downward spiral.
Oh, yeah. Then it imploded.
Yeah. I kind of expected the price to go down. I do get a lot of people who just don't want to buy my original art because they think that it's too expensive. They look at an Etch-a-Sketch, they think, well, that's a $10 toy. Why are you trying to sell a $10 toy for $200? And well, it's kind of like saying, why sell a $5 canvas for $1,000? Like, it's not that you're buying canvas, it's that you're buying the art on the canvas. And I think I definitely I still receive a lot of confusion as to like how I'm able to even sell my art for a certain price. I've sold my art for up to $3,000 per individual. And
I wouldn't even say confusion. I would say more of fascination, because not only is what you do fascinating, it's like, and it's probably another reason why these TikTok kids love you so much. It's like, here's someone that's not working a 9-to-5. This is literally all I want to do. So, I mean, that alone is worth a follow. But so it's $3,000 though. That's a lot. Like, what was that? The Van Gogh painting?
So I sold some master copies of famous paintings for around the $3,000 range, including Seurat, Sunday on the Grand Jatte. I just did an American Gothic last year that sold for around that price, as well as I've done, usually like $2,000 and up are like the master copies of famous paintings. But I've also done work for companies like, and I know we'll talk about this more, companies like Disney and MTV. I've worked with a lot.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of large companies like Callaway Golf hired me for 2 drawings for some reason. That was
okay.
Interesting projects. And I've worked with the Ritz-Carlton. I've worked with Cartoon Network, lots of big companies, because they'll decide for some reason that they want Etch-a-Sketch to be, you know, used in some kind of social media marketing campaign, or Etch-a-Sketch ties to some kind of retro aspect of something that they want to be working with. So that has been a really fun kind of niche that I sort of stumbled into, which has allowed me to work with these companies. There is a small community of Etch-a-Sketch artists. There are only 2 of us, including me, that are doing it actively as a full-time endeavor. We both have kind of different business models. So I used to be based in Chicago. Now that I mentioned I'm in Maryland, I focus more on doing commission-based work and working with, like, I guess, commercial companies, and then taking on smaller commissions from individuals. Whereas I also do workshops and occasional events. The other Etch-a-Sketch artist, he is Christoph Brown, known as the Amazing Etch Man. He's based in Los Angeles, and he focuses mostly on event work. So he's doing live Etch-a-Sketch art, similar to that of like a caricature artist, but instead with an, and that's his primary source of income. So we've kind of taken Etch-a-Sketch in 2 different professional directions, and we both have, it's kind of a Venn diagram. There are times when we're both doing the same things. There are times when we work together. There are times when we're doing our own completely separate thing. So he's the only other full-timer, but there are other Etch-a-Sketch artists who have varying degrees of kind of hobbyist income, where they might take on commissions occasionally or just do it for fun. Most Etch-a-Sketch artists just do it for fun.
Wow. So you say I caught B. Brian or Brandon or?
There's Brian. Yeah, Brian.
So you and him have kind of got this thing locked down. Like, I mean, like you said, like, I mean, if Disney went ahead and just like, we want an Etch-a-Sketch, I'm like, and to not take this the wrong way, like you said before, your social media is not really like anything to like no corporation would be like, oh yes, there's the Etch-a-Sketch artist with 1 million followers, well-known name. It's like they look at you like, I would assume a company would look at you as just like, oh, that's an Etch-a-Sketch artist. Let's see, 600 followers. Oh, let's see, somebody else, right? But no, you and Brandon, right? Brandon.
Oh yeah. So there's an Etch-a-Sketch artist, Brian, and
Brian.
But then there's Christoph in Los Angeles, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Christoph.
yeah, you're right though that the social media numbers don't really have much of an impact on whether or not these gigs are obtained. But it has more to do with the fact that there is just such a small pool of available artists who can even perform these tasks that they want to have hired out, that they're not really focusing so much on the social media following. They're focusing more on just finding an artist that can take the job and fulfill it.
Oh yeah, you literally own the game. You and like maybe 4 people.
Yeah. So if there's ever a gig that I don't get, I personally know who got it. Like it's just a matter of time before we all as a community find out, oh, who got that cool gig with so and so. And it's interesting. There's pros and cons to that. We're a very friendly, welcoming community. It's very tight-knit because, as you can imagine, there's not many of us. But there is a kind of bittersweet element to knowing that anytime one of these like really interesting gig opportunities pops up, you just know that if you don't get it, one of your best friends is going to get it, and you might have really wanted that job. So it's a bit tricky because it's kind of mixing business with friends. But in some ways, those are kind of my coworkers. Those are the people that I can really talk shop with the most. We have a pretty active group on Facebook. We'll do group Zoom hangouts and happy hours. We've all gotten together before. Sometimes we'll travel to visit one another. It's pretty fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
So to get down to the kind of pièce de résistance of the conversation, they must have been livid when WandaVision contacted you.
Well,
I would have disowned you. I would have been so upset for like 5 seconds, and then I just got over it and been like, congratulations.
Yeah, I wonder, and I'll never know because that's not something I can really ask the rest of the Etch-a-Sketch artist community. It's interesting. There are times when I'm aware that other people were contacted, and then there are other times where I'm not sure. And this is one of those times where I have no idea if the people who reached out to me about WandaVision also reached out to other Etch-a-Sketch artists. Sometimes they'll reach out only to me because they discover my content, and they're not necessarily researching every option available. So I haven't heard from anybody. Sometimes other people will tell me, like, I got that email too. Like, darn, well, glad you got the gig. And sometimes it happens where I'll get reached out to and then find out someone else got the gig. And usually people congratulate one another. It's pretty nice. But yeah, for WandaVision specifically, totally unsure if anyone else was reached out to, because if they were, nobody told me.
Yeah, you will never know, ever. There was probably 100 people that got that one. You'll never know. No one will ever admit that they were passed up for Marvel.
Yeah.
I'd take that to my grave. I would take that to my grave. Like, you would receive a letter upon my death. It's like, I got the Marvel invite too. Congratulations. Still hate you though. Like,
yeah.
Livid.
Well, the good news is that because of this strange little niche world I'm in, these kind of opportunities aren't once in a lifetime. I feel like there are once in a lifetime gigs that I didn't get that other Etch-a-Sketch artists got. And I think over the years, assuming Etch-a-Sketch still is one of these kind of pop cultural things, I think that more big companies are going to find a reason to use Etch-a-Sketch for this or that. When I got that WandaVision gig, it was actually one of the most stressful months of my entire life. I was in the process of moving from Chicago to Maryland in the middle of the pandemic. I had to arrange to find somebody to take over my lease, which was particularly stressful because I was living in Chicago and nobody wanted to move to a city during the pandemic. Yeah, it was pretty rough.
And And especially with during the pandemic, they were probably lowering the prices. So you were probably sitting at that sublease at the original price. They're like, no, the room adjacent starting like $200 less.
Yeah, it was a huge problem. And I had to move because long story short, I moved to Maryland because I bridged the gap with my boyfriend who got a job out here. And I always knew that was going to happen eventually. So I had already made arrangements with my landlord to find a sublease, to take over my lease, and basically allow me to completely walk away from the lease. And this was made way before pandemic began. By miracle, I found a tenant to take over my spot on the lease, which was fantastic. But I had to pack up my life. And I had less than a month to just pack everything up. And the holiday season is always the busiest for me. So WandaVision plopped into my lap right in the middle of my holiday season. And of course I took the gig. Like I made it.
Yes.
There were sleepless nights, but it was worth it. I can look back now and think, wow, I can't believe I did that. So it was a pretty stressful, hectic month, but super rewarding. And yeah, as an Etch-a-Sketch artist, I have no idea what my inbox is going to look like when I open my email in the morning. I sometimes get the strangest requests from companies like Marvel. So it's truly been for a pretty fairy tale artist existence so far. I mean, I've been full-timing going on 5 years this June. So in the 4.5-ish years that I've been doing this, I've really gotten to experience some pretty incredible things. Like I've said, I've gotten to work with Disney, Marvel, Cartoon Network, lots of big names. I've gotten to travel a lot. I went to Paris and to India. I did a media tour with Ripley's Believe It or Not at the end of 2019. So the people I've gotten to work with have just been fantastic. And the experiences I've gotten to have, I feel like were totally beyond the scope of what I ever thought this life as an Etch-a-Sketch artist was going to be. If I quit my career tomorrow, I'd feel like, you know what, it was a good run. Not that I planned. I
would not, no.
Yeah, I plan to ride this wave.
Yeah, 100%. So what was it like when you got published and then as what you said on the live stream, as per your contract, and I wouldn't worry about Disney finding out. I don't think they'll watch this particular episode. What was it like when everybody almost instantaneously demanded for the artist to be credited? Because like you said in the live stream, that shit used to not fly. They'd just be like, here's art that we pulled out the ether, and no, you will not know where it came from.
Yes, yeah, I'm happy to talk about this. So basically I did this video for WandaVision. It was used with Disney Plus UK, and as part of the agreement for the project that I did with them, it was known by me before I started the job that I would not get tagged or credited on social media. That was part of the deal. I knew it going into it. Unfortunately, artists don't necessarily have a lot of room to negotiate in those regards. If they make that decision's final. So it was something I was made aware of, and I had already kind of made peace with it. It's not the first time that's happened for me. I know it's an industry standard, so I figured that was that. So the post went live, and as you mentioned, and as I talked about in my previous live stream, all of the original comments on the video were people demanding to know why they didn't credit the artist, which as an artist, especially when they were referring to me, it felt so vindicating. It felt so
tears, literal tears.
And yeah, like it really means the world to me to know that people were fascinated enough by my art and invested enough in it to want to know who made it, because they wanted to find out the person behind the work. And that's incredible to me. I still know that that's not the norm on the internet. I know that I'm an outlier in that situation, but I'm really hoping that this becomes more of a trend on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
I really hope that
Absolutely.
people demand to give credit to the artists. So yeah, so they did end up retroactively tagging me in the post because they basically got bullied into it by complete strangers.
I
And
love it.
I mean, I'm incredibly grateful. It's more than I could have asked for. It's more than I expected. And, you know, I have no hard feelings for the company I worked with. I understood that was the industry standard expectation being put forward. Of course, I would have preferred to have been tagged like right when the post went live, because it really is only of benefit to the artist. And I did talk about this a bit in the live stream. Not that I'm used to like defending large companies by any means, but the only reason why I think they may not have wanted to tag me is perhaps with social media algorithms, there's some sort of detriment to tagging an artist in the description of the post. I'm not sure. That's me just hypothesizing. But, you know, they ended up tagging me, which was super cool. And then, of course, I got to share it everywhere, which I was going to do no matter what. They knew that.
Yeah. So what was that like? Like, what was that like? Like, when you, like, received that notification, like, what? Holy shit, they actually did it. Now, were you aware of the bullying? Were you, like skulking the comment section? It's just like, I hope they like my art. Maybe someone will want it bad enough and I'll message them directly and I can get a commission. Or was it just like, did they just, were you, like, just chilling and your phone went and you just looked at the comments and was like, oh my God, they wanted me?
I had no idea it went live until they tagged me. So I always request that the companies I work with, they were like a subcontractor who works with Disney Plus that like works with. So I always request that once it goes live that they send me a link. It's a basic courtesy that they could provide to me. Now they never did that, but I found it anyways. So it was kind of like, oh, whatever. And honestly, it's like 50-50 that I'll get notified when I do a project like this. It's incredible how often that's an afterthought for people.
Oh, yeah.
But I always end up finding it, so it's not a big deal. So yeah, the post went live. I had a vague idea of when it was going to go live because I knew they were using it as a piece of social media to hype up WandaVision, which was about to debut. So I knew it was going to go live before the show debuted because that was the purpose of the social media post that I created the art for. And so yeah, I got a random notification on my phone that, you know, Disney Plus UK tagged you in a post, and that surprised me. So I go to it, and then when I went to the post, I read all the previous comments. So the post had already been live for like 3 hours, which means it was practically
instant.
Yeah. So it was it already been live for a while, but yeah, people like. There were a few comments, and the majority of the comments were like, what, you're not going to tag the original artist? And I'm like, oh man, these people got my back.
Oh yeah.
On my behalf. Thank you, strangers. And you know, and I ended up, you know, I would never show indignance in a public manner on a social media post. So I was courteous. I said, thank you for working with me. It was a pleasure creating art for this franchise. And I just left a little comment on the video, and then people could find me through that. So it was cool. And I have other friends who've worked with large companies, and they all say the same thing. You know, it's just not common to be credited when you create art as an illustrator for any of these big companies. It's just, they just don't think of doing it. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because companies like Disney, if you're working on a project like a movie, you get credited at the end of the film, and with social media, you can't feasibly credit everybody involved in, a post about Frozen or something like that. It's like,
yeah,
properly credit every person involved. But when it is these occasions where it's like one artist that's responsible for the whole social media post, I really do hope that things kind of get more toward that. I do notice it's a trend online where people are expressing more indignance at art theft and not crediting. So
oh yeah, no, they don't put up with it.
Yeah, and that's wonderful, because even a decade ago, that was not the case at all. You had all these website content aggregators who were stealing content left and right from the internet, and nobody even thought twice about it. I feel like places like Facebook are still kind of bad about stealing content, like meme pages and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So there's definitely still a lot of that running rampant. But, you know, for me, I watermark my art. That doesn't stop people from stealing it. It doesn't stop people from removing the watermark, which has happened before. But, yeah, for me, whatever. If people really want to find my art, I think it's pretty easy to find it if you dig hard enough. I'm pretty easy to Google. Honestly, if you search the subject matter of most of my art, you end up stumbling upon an image of it on the first page of Google, so it's pretty easy to find. So I don't really fret about art thievery. I know a lot of early artists who might just start, you know, who might just be sharing their art online for the first time, might have a lot of trepidation about their content being stolen, but I don't think that should stop people from sharing content. There's, you know, beyond doing the measures like watermarking, there's really not much else you can do. Once it's on the internet, it's kind of a free-for-all. And
that's really kind of the catch-22 with artists. You kind of have to put your stuff out there and be given the opportunity of it stolen just to even make a name for yourself. Because, I mean, you can't, unless you're like right out the gate, mommy and daddy help me be a professional through whatever means they may have. You kind of have to just throw it out there to be stolen just for any type of recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you start developing a loyal enough following, you'll find that people are looking on your behalf. I get people messaging me here and there saying, oh, I found this here. I don't know if it was you that posted it. I'll have people who, on Reddit especially, it's pretty funny. So I use a different username on Reddit, which I've used 2 usernames consistently for the last 15 years on the internet. I've either used PrincessEtch or Pika Jane. And I use Pika Jane on Reddit. So people will sometimes come at me with pitchforks saying that I stole PrincessEtch's content, not realizing my secondary username. But it's like, you know what? I appreciate it. You know, it's misguided pitchforks, but at least they're looking out for me.
That's hysterical.
Yeah. They always feel a bit silly when I tell them, no, that's me. But people are always cool about it. You know, it's like I never. Yeah.
So, as we were discussing earlier, we kind of went over in your favor, I would admit, the scarcity of professional Etch-a-Sketch artists. Yeah. Now, as that may not be something you would want to change now, because I mean, if I was in your position, I'd be like, 4's good. I don't really want no more competition because this is already such a niche kind of. Sure. I mean, digital art could get to a place in maybe 10 years where they can just digitally Etch-a-Sketch it with an AI program or something. I don't even know. And that's just another anxiety to keep you up at night, I guess. That I just came up with that. Jesus, that's a horrifying thought. But then a
competition. Yeah.
But then, of course, you don't want the art form itself to die, because once 4 people are done with it, there's not anybody. Is there anyone in your immediate knowledge that would be like even comparable to you and the other guys?
Sure. So I guess first I'll address the idea of whether or not I would want the Etch-a-Sketch artist community to grow. Now,
in a professional capacity.
In a professional capacity. I mean, I think the altruistic answer would be absolutely yes, because I think that, you know, having the competition is healthy. But from a business standpoint, I fully understand that my niche is where my value is, and the less competition I have, the easier it is for me. I do find that because this is my full-time endeavor, the stakes are high for me. So when there are other Etch-a-Sketch artists who join the arena, by no means do I want to discourage them from entering the arena. I think it's great that people want to pursue this too, But I'm not about to give them my trade secrets, or, I'm willing to provide advice when they ask, but only to a certain extent, because one, I had to figure this out pretty much entirely on my own. I did have help here and there. But also, it wouldn't behoove my business very well to be helping my competition out free of charge. So I think it would really depend. At this point, I would be a lot more scared maybe 2 or 3 years ago if there was a much larger pool of professional Etch-a-Sketch artists. Mm-hmm. But I think that nowadays, I'm more than 4 years in, and I feel like I've established enough reasons for why people who are interested in working with me specifically would want to work with me specifically. And it's not just, my goal is not to find the kind of work where people want to hire the cheapest Etch-a-Sketch artist. I'm not interested in being the cheapest option. I'm not even interested in necessarily being the most expensive option. I'm interested in being the option that people want to work with because they want to work with me specifically. I can see where there might be an Etch-a-Sketch artist who charges more than me because maybe they put 5 times as long as I do in creating a single rendition. And for those people, I think their price is justified. If they're asking $10,000 for a drawing, then by all means, if they could sell it for 10 grand, then they should go for it. But what I find, and this will be interesting if other Etch-a-Sketch artists end up listening to this, what I find to be concerning is when people copy my pricing. Now, I have prices publicly available on Etsy, and have inadvertently established a public benchmark for commission rates that other artists have absolutely used. I can tell it's a small community. When other people post their pricing, I wonder how they were informed by their rates. I have specific equations I used where I determined the hourly rate I want, the cost of materials, the amount of time it takes me, the years of experience I have, all that good stuff. And so when I find other Etch-a-Sketch artists decide that they're interested in starting commission work and have prices quite similar to mine, I would really prefer they not do that, because I want their prices to be based on what they have to offer, and they're basing their prices on what I have to offer, which I think is just an incorrect thing. But with also with that said, when I started selling commissioned work, I was starting at about $40 per rendition. That's to make a permanent Etch-a-Sketch. And I had no choice but to raise that rate if I was interested in any means in actually making a living doing this. I have to pay taxes, I have to pay health insurance, I have to pay self-employment, unemployment, and all that good stuff. I'm a legitimate fledged business, so I have, there's many reasons why I charge what I charge. So when people balk at the idea of me selling something for $1,000, 30% of that's going away to taxes alone. So it's definitely it's something that I have to really take into consideration as a business person. I'm an Etch-a-Sketch artist, but I'm also a business person. So I would definitely welcome more professional Etch-a-Sketch artists to enter the sphere, because I think there's room for more. It's a big world, and there's only 2 of us doing it full time. I think there's room for more of us. But with that said, you can imagine that the demand for an Etch-a-Sketch artist is also not necessarily global. It's not very often that people have a need for an Etch-a-Sketch artist. So I try to fulfill that need whenever it arises, and recognize that that need may not arise for months at a time. As a freelancer, my income can be very much like a roller coaster. But I've learned to, I know how to live that lifestyle. I'm a pretty frugal person. I know how the feast and famine cycle works. So being an Etch-a-Sketch artist is, of course, an awesome time. It's lots of fun. But being a freelance artist in general can be a pretty tough gig. So it can also be a rather cutthroat world, even in the world of Etch-a-Sketch. So it's definitely, it would be interesting if more people entered the fold. I would wonder how that would change the industry. But I also find that the more popular Etch-a-Sketch artists become, the better it is for the whole community. Because the more people you have talking about Etch-a-Sketch, the more likely that everybody who's selling anything to do with Etch-a-Sketch art is going to benefit in some capacity. So there's a very long-winded answer to your question.
So, I mean, how long would it even take for someone to become, like, how long would it even take for, like, let's say one random person is just like, oh yeah, I thought Etch-a-Sketches were cool, thought nothing of it, but if this lady's making $1,000 on a painting, how long would it realistically take me to get to, let's say, half that level?
That's a really fun question. That's a really fun question. I don't know if I can really give a solid answer to that, because when I teach my workshops, the workshops, for example, I teach 1 hour workshops in the basics of Etch-a-Sketching. I'm talking about doing staircases, teaching how to do diagonals, and if we're lucky, maybe we'll cover curves. I don't expect circles to be taught in lesson 1, but I can never tell when the lesson begins who is going to have a proficiency for Etch-a-Sketch and who isn't. It could be young or old. You never know who's going to pick it up and kind of click with it. And the people who do kind of click with it already kind of have a leg up. But I do think it's a learnable skill. So if we're starting with somebody who literally only knows staircases and may not have an aptitude for Etch-a-Sketch, which I believe I didn't have an initial aptitude for Etch-a-Sketch. I spent a long time just doing staircases, basically. I think if you're very serious about it, if you put in a few hours a week of practice, probably maybe half a year for you to get to the point where you're starting to really comfortably be able to recreate things on command. It's more a matter of once you learn those curves and get to the point where you don't have to think about which way you need to turn the knobs, that's when it's kind of like you hit the top of that bell curve, and it kind of like plateaus from there. The skills
I can only imagine. I can only imagine the muscle memory that, like, to make a circle, like I couldn't even imagine how that's done.
Right, and once you do know how to do it, it's kind of like solving a Rubik's Cube. Once you learn how to do it, you probably don't forget it, and you get better at it the more you practice it. So your first Rubik's Cube solves might take a while, but the more you practice it, the quicker you're going to get. And just like with drawing a circle on an Etch-a-Sketch, the first time you do it, it might be a bit bumpy. I always say people go through like a potato phase when they're drawing circles. So they might look very potato-like at first, but the more you do it, the more proficient you're going to get and the smoother the circle's going to get. Now, the true test of if somebody will actually take this to a professional level is if people are willing to learn how to preserve the Etch-a-Sketches, because there's a lot more knowledge about that these days than there was a decade ago. A few Etch-a-Sketch artists, including I, have shared our preservation processes online. So it's much more of an open source friendly place now for somebody who wants to do that for the first time. But it's not fun. It's messy, it's tedious, it's time consuming, it's frustrating. And most people who have an interest in drawing on an Etch-a-Sketch will get to the point where they want to preserve one, and once they figure out what they need to do to preserve one, they'll stop right there. They'll just never consider professional Etch-a-Sketch artistry again. For me, it's the worst part of my job by far. It's necessary, but I know people who have been hardcore into drawing on Etch-a-Sketch for years and years and refuse to even preserve one because they understand just how much of a nightmare it is.
Jesus Christ, how bad could it be?
It's a pain in the butt. It's some people use power tools to do it. The problem is inside of an Etch-a-Sketch, there's this aluminum powder, and that powder is so thin that when airborne, it's like smoke. And everything it touches, it coats. And this stuff, it's like silver everywhere. Silver streaks on your hand. Last time I did preservation, I got it in my hair. I had to go take a shower because the top of my head was just coated in aluminum. I wear basically a gas mask while doing preservation just to keep the particulates out of my lungs. Now, they say that Etch-a-Sketch, on the back of each Etch-a-Sketch, it says the contents are non-toxic. Now the quantity.
They said lead paint was non-toxic too at one point in time.
Right. Yeah, aluminum is known for being problematic if dealt with in large doses. So I do my best to maintain safety standards when I'm dealing with them. Hopefully I don't develop some sort of aluminum related sickness later in my life. I sincerely hope not. I really don't want to be victim to my own materials. But not only that, Etch-a-Sketch art is very fragile. It's extremely fragile, even during preservation. So a lot of people will spend gratuitous amounts of time creating a beautiful drawing on an Etch-a-Sketch, very carefully go about trying to preserve it, and then they'll break it during preservation because the process can be very, very tedious. So it's a very discouraging medium for a lot of people to get into for a lot of reasons. It's designed to be impermanent. It's designed to not let you sell it easily. And that's why I don't think there's going to be much competition popping up, despite there being any raising popularity in Etch-a-Sketch artistry online. I think people will, I imagine there will be people who will be interested in creating beautiful things on an Etch-a-Sketch, but they won't want to go through with making it permanent.
So Etch-a-Sketch art, like everywhere could just be like, if you don't have your own Etch-a-Sketch art piece, you're kind of useless, and there's still going to be like 4 people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it would be amazing if the demand for Etch-a-Sketch art became so high that other people entered the arena and decided like the money in this is just too fantastic. There's so much demand. I sure hope that happens, because if that happens, that means I can raise my prices a bunch.
Oh, yeah. That was another thing I wanted to say. I would actually think that these noobs that you were talking about using your pricing model would actually be a benefit to you, because their art's nowhere near going to be your level. And then when someone, if they believe that this plebeian standard is and let's say $600, that's the baseline, they would look at yours and they'd probably think yours was a steal until you discovered it and then doubled the price, and they'd be like, well, yours looks better, so yeah, no, $1,200 does sound like the industry standard.
Sure. And it I should specify also that I have different price rates for corporate versus personal commissions based on
bleed the corporations dry. Bleed them dry.
Of course. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that, especially because anytime I work with a corporation, they always have very special bells and whistles that they want added with their art that Joe Schmo, who just orders a picture of their kid, isn't going to ask for. Joe Schmo isn't going to ask for a time-lapse video and licensing rights, and they're not going to be, doing stuff with promotional materials or, any of that, so it's, it definitely, justifies different price points. But now, one thing that I don't know is if people who are using my pricing structures are having success selling their art. If I found that my stuff was selling like hotcakes at my current pricing structure, then that would encourage me to raise it further. I do raise my pricing about 10% every year. And that's something I encourage all artists to do. It's good practice for a lot of reasons. It fights inflation. It justifies the rising cost of all of your materials and health insurance and all other business expenses. And it justifies that you are now 1 year all the better at your craft. So, when you get better, you should charge more. So, yeah, I raise my prices every year. Also, it helps people to realize who've bought my work in the past that they got my work for a good deal, because it's only ever going to get more expensive. I'm never going to lower my prices. With that said, if I found that other artists were selling their stuff like hotcakes using my pricing, that might encourage me to raise mine further. I don't yet have enough data on that to determine if that's really worth my while. All I know is my own personal data. And with my own personal data, I seem to have hit a nice little sweet spot where I'm getting enough work at my current rates. I definitely lost a lot of people when I jumped my rates up a few years ago. Like I said, when I started, my stuff was at like $40. I went from 40 to over 100 basically overnight one day after realizing my stuff just wasn't expensive enough to justify the amount of time it took me to make it. So once I did that flip, that was pretty scary because I lost a lot of my old customers. A lot of people who originally bought my stuff were never going to buy anything else from me again because they were used to spending $60 or $40 and they didn't want to spend double the cost or triple the cost.
Oh, they were reselling and it wasn't profitable for them anymore.
Well, for the custom stuff, I would imagine they probably weren't reselling, but I do try to offer for that reason. I offer print products on Etsy, like postcards, stickers, photo prints, you know, kind of small tchotchke like items. I do that so that I can still offer things to people who would like to support me, but don't have, you know, a minimum of $150 to invest in an original piece. But I am starting to kind of pull back on that business model because I would prefer my focus be more on doing an art piece for $3,000 and doing a few of those in a year instead of selling $10 prints. You know, it's like two very different business models. So, yeah, so it's it'll be interesting to see what's in the future, what to expect, especially once the world reopens. I think it'll be really interesting to see where my Etch-a-Sketch art fits in this post-pandemic world. Will I be going back to events? Will I be teaching workshops again? I sure hope so.
Oh, absolutely. Well, hey, it looks like your hour is up. It has been fantastic having you on. This has been a long work in the way, and I'm so glad that we finally got it through.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm always happy to talk about what I do. This was definitely a pretty technical talk on my end. Hopefully that's, I kept the things in the direction that you wanted it to go.
Oh yeah, no. Well, normally I understand you're a very busy person, especially with anything that you might have going on and the move being so new, but no, we could definitely keep this going for at least I normally have 3-hour episodes. I mean, you saw my first episode with my friends, so I mean, yeah, I can keep the ball running, but again, I understand that you have to, so I felt it was imperative to get, especially as an introductory episode, we had to get like everything just flattened out. Like, I think my only regret is I didn't open up with what is an Etch-a-Sketch, but I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody already knew that already. But again, it was great having you on, Jane. Go ahead and tell everybody your social media plugs, and I'll be sure to have those in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely. So my social media is @PrincessEtch. You can go to my website, princessetch.com. And yeah, I'm on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. You can find me. Yeah. So, yep, princessetch.com.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
All right, goodbye, everybody.